Hi, I'm Seamless, and today is Wednesday, which means it's time for a new viewer track review video. If you would like to have one of your tracks featured in one of these videos, feel free to hop on over to the description. The description of this video, the description of this video, where there's a link to a Discord, and then within the Discord, wow, that was a hard one. You'll find a channel with submissions and stuff, plus rules for the submissions, and people to help you out with the submissions in case things are weird. But anyway, once that happens, it'll be entered into the bit of place where I randomly choose which tracks get picked, 7 of them each time. And today we're going to get started with SixSided Domino. Let's see what this is like. Well, parts of this were ridiculously baller. Like, this section is just like a crowning achievement. This is seriously just super cool. So much so that I honestly think this should come first. Like, this should be what happens here. Like, that would have been ridiculous. Like, that, okay. Other thing about this track is that a lot of these parts kind of linger a bit. There's this desire to not necessarily let it languish, but let epic stuff like ring out, right? Yeah, a good example of having done this, in my opinion, is Linkin Park's own remix of their own song, "Crawling," which they straight up call the epic version. And this is a kind of fun thing to do when you do covers or remixes, where like you have already, you know what the melody is, you know what the leads are, especially if it's a famous song, you know what all the parts are that people like. So you get to play with them. You get to kind of like lead in with them in a weird way, or kind of foreshadow them and do all this fun stuff. And you really, it's extra special when you do, because the people are into the content and really want to hear, like, it's an anthem for them probably. So hearing it like this is genuinely interesting. The problem with that, though, is, in my opinion, that kind of thing isn't really genuinely interesting unless it is exactly that. Which is to say, if you make an original version of it and just kind of let it happen, if it's what's happening by itself, that it's not very engaging. Not nearly for the length of time that the stuff was allowed to go for, in my opinion. Like, especially in this intro, like, this part could have been gone. You could have just started here, even, and not had this part. I also think that this layer of strings and the one other one seem strangely far apart from each other. I don't know if they are or not, but they kind of feel that way. And so do like some of the brass instruments. Like, just the way that some of them are leveled, it doesn't sound bad, I guess. Oh, it's not that weird. But here's something else. Your out here moments were also very good. Like, it's fun that you did that effect on this, because it helped to mask some of the compression problems that were more prevalent and obvious here. Oh my god, though, you got it so close. Like, this seriously, like, needed only to be just like a millisecond faster. And the rest of this is almost perfect. Like, until you hit the max threshold and stuff starts happening to everything, it is a really beautiful mix, this whole section here. So I can feel the compression doing stuff, but because we've had harder things in this track, it doesn't feel that outlandish. And in fact, feels delicate and finesse, like, in comparison. But then it kind of that was fun, though. I like that little addition. And then, like, this, that was long in the tooth. This was cool. Some of this was a little bit arrhythmic in a way that didn't sit well, but like, it was surrounded by just constant gold, so didn't really feel bad about it. Outro could be whatever it's like, but generally, like, this part, like, this could have happened over this, or before it, or less of it. You know, it didn't need to be that long. We're not that engrossed in the themes, you know. For in this track, the moments are like these things. Hearing the actual combination of the elements. The elements by themselves are fun, but it's the combination. That's the point in these examples. Unless it's like a Glitch Bobbian-esque remix of a thing, in which case, so like, that's another good example of doing it right. Doing the epic with the things that are epic, actual epics. And I don't mean things that sound epic, things that are actually heard of and known to an epic degree. It's a different and special threshold, and it's a big reason why people, when they're new producers, they do that. They do remixes and collabs, because you're just plugging directly into, like, so many people who are into it and interested. Unless this is a remix of something that I just don't know about. Either way, though, excellent track. Just pretty much all the way around. Like, just very, not really a problem in this. Like, just a bit about the compression, but other than that, great. Moving on, we have Believe by Bjorne. Ha ha ha. Let's see what we have. At the beginning. Yeah, there you are. Yep, doing it right this time. Doing it right this time. Well, that was extremely solid. This was excellent, top to bottom. I have no technical complaints about this whatsoever. Maybe this is a tad long, but holy balls, this was just such a flawless execution of this style. Like, and on top of that, I really dig how the vocal came first and then the bass part. It really gives this like verse chorus vibe a different kind of meaning, because normally when I make these kinds of things, I think the precise opposite. I imagine the bass parts as being like a verse part, a very active and talkative thing, and not a very repetitive sort of chorus element. And it's very interesting to see this basically be turned on its head. And I thought that was very cool. Like, everything is extremely well cut and set and mixed, and like it's loud without being like overly damaging. Like, it's not that delicate either, but it's still like not intense. This has a very bitstream dreamy value to it. Do you guys know who that is? Ever hear about them? Maybe him, them, her, they, multiple, singular. I don't actually know. They were on, I forget what racing game, but it was a very similar sort of style, like the chordal background kind of vibes. But geez, like, what a extremely well done technical powerhouse. Is this even a WAV file? I can't tell. It might be, but look how nicely it rolls off on the top too. Like, you can see this extremely like even blend of things. This is a little bit what you want to see when you look at a track in terms of like a mix. It's true, individual elements have to be treated individually, but it's still adding up to a shape. And you want that shape to be something that's like, I mean, maybe you do, maybe not. Like, it's not like, I was about to compare this to sort of like story writing. Like, you could think of like a very complicated, fun, like sort of like time travel based foreshadowy, like Lupiture complicated super thing. Or you can do a very kind of straightforward by the numbers, but still competently delivered with interesting elements and interesting twists within a predictable realm. Like, this is one of those examples. Like, this drum and bass style has been a thing for a long time, and there's only so well you can do it before you basically are not doing it anymore, before you're doing something so new, because it's so far outside of what the range was. And this is like I'm sure other people have done this kind of thing more than just this, but like, this is like one of the first times I sat down and examined it well enough to notice it happening. But the point I'm making is that like, those are the types of variations that like are still the style, but are new enough to be just an actual new expression of it, but a main element of it. And that's hard. That's really hard. And not just because like you have to sort of know it well enough to be able to see that you can play with that kind of things, but hard to find something this big you can do that could still be like original. That's like finding a real word that you could just write out whole without any numbers or expletives, and you can actually have it as an account name for Google. Like, that's the kind of hard this is. Like, finding something that works like that isn't just already a track someone did. Like, I've actually been listening to a lot of old ass Tear Out and a bunch of new stuff. I was just before listening to all this, listening to One of a Noisy Radio. And this would fit right the hell in. So that's how you know it's pretty good. All right. Moving on, we have Colors and Crystals by New Pumas by Colors and Crystals. And I have to wonder if it's possessive. I don't know. Wow, though. Look how dense this looks relative to the other things that we've seen so far. It like, let's see if perhaps that has an impact. All right, zooming into hell in. Give me the edge of the thing. Moving to the beginning, not starting the middle. Let's see what this sounds like. Okay, well, that sounded like a bunch of loops put together. It definitely appears that is the case. Structurally speaking, you put it together, I guess. Are you two? Is this a collab? Is Colors and Crystals two different people, or is you a individual person? Because this would make a lot of sense if this was a collab. In the sense that there's just two different things happening, and the switch up's not necessarily bad, but like it's one of those DJ switch ups, as in like switch ups DJs do to switch between two different songs. I've told this sort of thing about me before, but when I was new, I mean like a child, when I didn't know, well, I mean I was 16, but like I didn't know how DJs work because I had never gone to like a real show before. So I just been listening to the radio and heard lots of mixes on songs, and most of the time the mixes were done well enough that I didn't really know when one song ended, another one began, and got a real taste for imagining that these tracks had these intensely disparate parts as just like being part of the style. It almost became like a how different could you be in the same song, and like I would almost have like 3 or 4 going on. Like I didn't get it. I didn't know what a song was because I was mostly used to what like rock and metal was, which is just a collection of riffs. Like we have all this like structure and integrity and like ordered things, and that's just because DJs exist. But in the band universe, it's whatever. So like I just thought, so sure, why not too, right? But turns out no, those are all just mixed songs, and like this would be a whole song, and like this would be a whole song. And then this would be the mashup. This sounds like the mashup, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like a few times when I've talked about this, I've mentioned it as sort of like, well, don't do that, Dirt, because that's not how this works. But at the same time, what if it is? What if you have listened to lots of mixes and things and think that like the track should be a question of how different parts could be disparately put together? If that's the style you want to do, then go for it. Because why the hell not? Just really, literally, why not? I'm sure there might be some valuable answers to that question. Anyway, this was decent enough overall individual bits, but the way it was all together definitely felt very like nothing was really together. There were really very individual parts, and like the drums, like there's some side chaining happening, and like it's fine, but the sounds were all very different from each other, very undone. And so like, when I'm slamming together a bunch of loops, because it's not like I haven't done this before, like the thought is not just that like I have to have them be different sounds to be cool and all. I have to kind of create a homogeneity between them that makes them feel like they're from the same thing. And a lot of the times that's just reverb that does that. I noticed that a lot of these sounds individually have air, but some of them don't. Some of them are really dry, and I wonder how much there's effects on a lot of these sounds, and how many of them are just the way they were. Like, I'm also assuming hardcore here that this is mostly sample based and not that y'all or yous synthesized this all yourself, but it is completely possible that you did. And like, I'm not trying to be all snooty about it, because even if you did, the results are still pretty much the same, which is that you need to kind of like blend them together a little better. And because like it isn't just about having things that fill the spectrum. Like you have that art that happens like most of the time up here, but it's not even really that filling. It's there, and white noise is there. The things are all technically there, but they're not really doing a lot, and they don't need to be doing too much more. But like a little bit of reverb goes a long way, especially when you can sidechain it with the kicks and things, because it helps it all to feel like there's that stuff. That's what the stuff belongs to, and it's all getting beaten up, and it's all being compressed together. All that stuff. Have to go just a slight extra mile if the result is like this, and also especially if you literally intend to make your track be very different from itself, then that's just extra that you have to do. Not impossible and not bad. It's just that. It's just extra work. But good work getting there. Up next we have The Forsaken Realm by Cysco. Loud by Cysco. Here comes what this is. Keep forgetting I can just scroll. All right. Boy. Okay, well, this has a dynamic range issue, primarily that everything is the same level as everything else. There is no negative space in this song whatsoever. And it's a big problem. Well, it's not really a big problem. It's a big shame, I should say, because this track rules. I love this style. You don't hear it so much anymore, but you notice these sort of darker bits where you kind of you pull off on the bass, and there's still so much air in there that you don't get the cool kind of stopped feeling from having done it. And it's mostly that like your loud kind of reverb elements are really loud. They just need to be turned down a bit. And so it's true mostly for the rest of your high frequency stuff. I noticed up here that like it's peaking like as high as the bass, and the mids are just kind of not there. Which true, that's how like that's like the spread of how humans like to look at stuff as loud. But it like was just too top heavy on this, pretty much all the way up. Too much top heavy. Most of the regular, normal, everything else was great. Not a huge fan of this guitar-y sounding thing because it just was slightly too fakey sounding. It's hard. It's difficult to do that without just getting either just a really good sample library or just doing it with a guitar. And it's mostly why, for most of my life, I avoided ever doing anything but that until I could do that because it sounds like this. And yeah, it could have been any other sound though. Like it's not super intrusive. It's not even that bad now, but it mostly just kind of triggers me because like the bit on it, like it's just the kind of off time that no guitarist would be. And if like it wasn't your desire to sound realistic, then cool, you didn't. Good job. Yeah, the mix, the heart of the mix was in the right place in terms of how well separated and cut up stuff is, which definitely enabled you to push it as far as you did. Just congratulations, you pushed it too far. Just pull off a bit on some of the elements that aren't supposed to be the main things don't have to be as bright as the main things. You still want it to be filled up and fold up and whatnot. Just try and make them feel like they're coming from the one thing with layers and not so much with like just there being a sandwich of a billion other things. So you can have that negative space and it'll sound nice. Otherwise, good job. Moving on, we have Mindskulker by Octium. I hope this is some kind of metal. It looks a little bit freaky. Here we go. Indeed. That was a smorgasbord of bass. That, like, it was just so much random stuff. It was very progressive and a bit haphazard. This bit was cool. There's a lot of really cool bits. There's a lot of really neat stuff, but this is just not a song. And this is even more weird and disparate than, like, a kind of hacked together DJ-ish thing experience. But this did feel a lot more, like, internally cohesive, if that makes sense. Like, it's true, all the bits that are weird, it's mostly just the arrangement that's just odd. But the stuff is fine. And, like, the separation is good, and the bass feels nice, and, like, I dug how some stuff came through. Like, it's just, like, it's stuff like this part could have been probably the whole song. This is something that I learned, I don't know, this is something that anyone even cares about, but, like, when I was sort of starting out and trying to do drum and bass, I'd really overcomplicate things, because why not? That's just what I do, obviously. But I would be very flabbergasted when I go and look at the things I claimed to be my influences and going and seeing that they used like 1/10 the amount of stuff I did. And I don't even mean that they were like more elegant and got more out of one thing. It's just that they literally just used one thing. They just would play the same thing, the same main kind of riff over and over again. And some of these could be that. Some of those things could be that in this whole experience. And a bunch of other of it is just a lot of random, ill-fitting things. It just does not flow. The spice does not flow with this one. Still though, it's great, like, expression of stuff. Like, it's a good pat of sketch. Like, this could be arranged into something kind of epic. I just it'd probably be by pruning most of it. Neat though. Up next I have I Want to Go Home by Swagger Man. Wow, that is low level. I almost want to normalize this. Okay, let's see what this sounds like. I said... I'm speaking very quietly because I had to jack the level up really high to hear that. And I'm sure lots of you guys did too. Okay, so this sounded like it was constructed by a bunch of loop stuff that was found in a pack from 2011. The Zelda samples, really? Like, it's so, like, this almost feels like a period piece. It's so on the nose. Other than the fact that it's at like minus 25,000 dB, I would say that this is pretty solid. It's a little too solid, you know what I mean? It doesn't do a lot. It is exactly the size and shape of the thing that you're doing. It has the line, it is the thing. To say that, there's not really any flaws with it. Like, I guess this is good to go get mastered, I suppose. You might still want to separate your subs, but this also might just be clean enough to not need that. I honestly don't know because I'm not sure I heard this right. At the right level this is. But Yeah, there's nothing really wrong with assembling songs. Like, whatever it is that we can do to arrange and engineer the results we want is the thing that happens that makes the thing that works. It's just very interesting how very specifically that extremely specific time period. And mostly I date this by your willingness to even use that Zelda sample, since it's pretty much the first thing that happened when dubstep got popular enough. But yeah, it is a track. It is very a track. It is very high on the trackness. It's so very a track. Coming up next, we have Bandit by Malsy Pright. And this one has level. That's more than infinity. All right, here it comes. that was just wonderful. Like, there's so much wrong with this, but damn, it does not. It just it brings me back. Like, it's written the kind of way that I used to write stuff when I've just started, and in the sense that mostly because I have been surrounded by instrumentalism my whole life. I just sort of view things in that regard, and I almost want to give like sounds and instruments their time to shine. And I just thought it was the best when like there was the drum solo. Like, God, that's just exactly what I was like. There had to be a moment for everything to kind of show off, because that's just what music was like, right? And this sort of does all that. And something infuriating about those tracks for me, as the person writing them, which might be end up being true for you too, is that I was never really able to reproduce that arrangement style in sort of modern things without like extraordinarily trying to, because like for not knowing enough about mixing or mastering or sound design as I did back then, all I could do was arrange, and that meant that I solved problems with arrangement, and that meant that this track as it is pretty much can only exist this way. It very much, I'm sure, when you attempt to adjust anything, it alters the balance in a way that affected some quality of it you didn't know it was reliant on. Like, it is such a hard thing to do, because at the stage, it's a lot easier just to find sounds and samples than it is to like actually create the thing that'll solve the problem and do the job that you want to do at the moment. But it is okay enough to find enough stuff that when you add together, it fills up the right area like 70% of the way. And yeah, there might be 40% extra junk that you're not prepared for, but like you almost think of it as like a price, that like there's a certain amount of unpredictability in your music that you have to live with in order to get the bit of it that you actually like. And any adjustment to that stuff either also removes the parts of it that you like. And that becomes a problem if you ever do gain the skills to kind of do it right the first time, is that when you try to actually do this again, you discover just about every single thing that was cool about it was because you didn't do it the way that you wanted to get it the way you needed to the first time. That's pretty much all of my old music. Lots of really cool ideas that if I dare attempt to do again, could not shine the way they did. Kind of like old movies, you know, like they worked with the materials they had, and with us noobs producers, we worked with the knowledge that we had, and it did things that was the only reason we did them is because we didn't know better. Lots of what I would do too is just kind of like find the cool groove and just sort of lean on it for a while, and like it's a lot of this in this too. It's not even really necessarily bad, except that like I imagine some of these choices in like tone and also level and loudness. I doubt your desire was to be that quiet, which was something that was also quite common about my stuff back then too, is that like I get to a nice comfortable place that has a kind of groove I like, and then I go listen to like actual music, quote unquote, and you get be blown away by it at similar levels, and I realize that there's a vast problem with my things, what I'm trying to do. And for the most part, what I missed back then was exactly how much power added up, especially under compression. I also didn't really understand compression at all back then. That was kind of a big deal. I didn't even get the limiter. I mostly knew that if I put a fruity compressor on things, it would turn stuff down. In the very beginning, I mostly just turned the master down until it stopped distorting. It would do it anyway. A very hard time in the beginning coming to grips with the way that power adds together, and also how sidechain works and that kind of things and its importance. This reminds me almost of my track Dreams of Bass, which was pretty much made before I did any kind of referencing on the material I was trying to reproduce. And then I did, and then I came back. Also, I had intermediary, like 6 years of being in a metal band with doing recording and things. Lots of experience in trading there that came in handy eventually. I dig the track. My recommendation for you personally, it's kind of twofold, like threefold. The first fold is get referencing on things, if you even are. Like, it was difficult for me to even tell you what my goals were back then when I was making stuff. I didn't have any real professional aspirations, and by the time I did, I still hadn't settled on what I felt like my style. It seemed to change constantly, and what ended up happening was not really I just like to do everything. I like finding out how to do everything. I like knowing how to do everything. I don't necessarily want to do everything, but knowing how is pretty cool. But what ends up happening is you go and you watch those songs and you listen to them again and you realize that they're not as nearly as complex as you're trying to make the stuff we are. And of course, part of that is because of our layering habits, but the other half of it is because we're just starting to scratch the surface of an interesting feeling. And that feeling is that, hey, a lot of this stuff is a lot less complicated than I thought it was originally. And it's just a big old downhill slide from there. From like examining old tracks that inspired you really a lot, and like the more knowledge you gain, the more you're sort of peeling back the layers of magic, and they seem less and less impressive. And because you're learning more, you're figuring out what the things are instead of like you're actually feeling out for real the actual mechanical processes that translate to creating the feeling you're trying to get, not necessarily the sound. Because your memory of a lot of music before you started to analyze them, with even this amount of discussion we're having, is mostly of emotions and feeling. That like, wow, this song really made me feel X. And when you try to write something, a lot of your goals is mostly just to make it so that it makes you feel X. And your first step is to just try and replicate the things that made you feel that way. But then you have to kind of understand, like, really how did they make you feel that way and why? A big thing that this will tell, like one of the things you want to learn, for example, is transitions. Changing from one section to another fills those kinds of elements. And when you go and actually observe them directly, what you'll discover is that they are also very much less complicated. In fact, deliberately so. That like there's not as much happening in them as you might have imagined or remembered. And when you try to do them and try to like layer in all the things all at once and like layer a fill on top of all the things that are also happening, that is a lot of work and a lot of mixing problems that the people that we're technically emulating don't even mess with, because they just avoid it. And it's that kind of strategy that we just sort of assume that they don't do, because I don't know if you have any kind of, if like musical instrumentalism is your background, but for me, I'm mostly just used to the fact that things all get smashed together, and that like from like a perspective of a band, and you just kind of lived with it. Like that kind of 40% jank was sort of reality, because like my dad's biggest influence was jazz bands in the 60s and 70s, and that like, and rock and roll and that kind of thing, and that's just like hyper jank. And a lot of it gets a little high level to be learning a bit about this kind of thing, but eventually you'll discover that a lot of what made you feel a certain way can be done too perfectly, that you can do the thing that it technically does, and you can do it better. You can do it better than they intended to do it when they made the thing that made you feel a way. You might even be able to do it the way they actually wanted to do it, the way when they made the thing that made you feel that way. But it might not make the thing that made you feel the way. And in fact, the way that it was done might be the only way that makes you feel the way. And it has nothing to do with like what are the process or the desires of the artist. It's just everything to do with what we drilled into our heads over our lifetime of listening to music. That's that. Yeah. If y'all have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And as usual, please have a nice day.